The great hall of the Cairn Dominion glowed with cold light, its walls lined with metal banners and alien symbols etched deep into the stone. The air shimmered with the scent of burning oils, and armored guards lined the path to the throne. They were tall, broad, their armor reflecting the brilliance of their empire. Every guest knew this was a moment of history, but not everyone believed it was a wise one. Queen Sarathis sat upon the throne, her crown glinting like fire beneath the chamber lights. Her violet eyes scanned the crowd, sharp and commanding. She was not young, yet her beauty carried the weight of power. She had led her people through battles, and her name was known across the galaxy. Her warriors loved her for her strength, and her rivals feared her. Today, however, she did not look pleased. Her lips tightened, her hands rested still upon the throne's arms, and her gaze slid toward the man standing at her side. Marcus Hale. He was the first human ever to stand in this hall in such a place of honor. To the Cairn nobles he looked plain, his form lean, his clothing simple, his face too soft to belong to a warrior. No horns, no talons, no natural armor like the other species they knew. He was only human, fragile in their eyes, a creature of flesh and bone so easily broken. Yet here he stood, dressed in ceremonial robes of the Dominion, his posture straight, his expression calm. He was not nervous. He was not afraid. If he felt the weight of the stairs upon him, he did not show it. The nobles whispered. Their voices rustled like knives in the shadows. The queen binds herself to weakness, one said. A man of no power, no legacy. Another sneered. He cannot even wear armor. How can he defend her, defend us? Others muttered that this marriage was not a union of strength, but a chain that would drag their empire down. Sarathis heard them. She always heard them. For months her advisors had pressed her to choose another path, another ally, another warlord from among the stars. Yet she had chosen this union with a human. Why? Some thought it was desperation. Others thought it was madness. Only Sarathis knew the truth, and she was not certain even she trusted it. The ceremony began, words echoing through the hall in both the Cairn tongue and in human speech. The translator drones hummed, but Marcus did not use them. He had learned enough of the Cairn language to speak for himself, his voice clear though accented. When he promised loyalty and honor, the nobles scoffed, yet they listened. There was something in his voice, something steady that made even the most doubtful pause for a breath. When the vows were complete, Sarathis and Marcus stood side by side, joined not only by law but by the eyes of the galaxy. Outside the palace, crowds roared, some in celebration, some in protest. Across the stars, enemies and allies alike recorded the moment. Humanity, still young among the interstellar powers, had just bound itself to one of the great empires. Later, in the private chambers of the palace, the tension between the two was sharper. Sarathis removed her crown, placing it upon a stand. She studied Marcus as he poured himself a glass of water, moving with the calmness of someone who had seen too much already. You know they despise you, Sarathis said, her voice low but strong. They see weakness in you. They see weakness in me for choosing you. Marcus drank, then set the glass down. Yes, he replied simply. I know. And yet you do not flinch. She narrowed her eyes. Do you not care? He met her gaze without hesitation. His eyes were steady, brown and unremarkable to alien eyes. Yet behind them there was something that unsettled even Sarathis. Not fear, not pride. Something deeper. I care, Marcus said. But their opinion does not matter. What matters is what we build together. Her brows arched. His words were not defiance, but neither were they submission. Most consorts she had known would have bowed, eager to please, desperate to avoid her wrath. Marcus did not. He spoke as if he were her equal, though he stood in a palace not his own, surrounded by those who hated him. Humans, Sarathis said, almost spitting the word, are not known for strength. Not like the Cairn, not like the Tarkal or the Varen. You break easily. You bleed easily. And yet you stand here as if nothing can touch you. Marcus gave the faintest of smiles, not mockery, but something quiet and confident. Perhaps strength is not only about flesh, he said. Perhaps strength is about how much one can endure, and still rise again. Sarathis fell silent. The thought lingered, but she did not allow it to take root. She had married him for reasons of strategy, nothing more. Humanity had growing influence among trade routes, and their expanding colonies could prove useful to the Dominion. A marriage sealed their loyalty. She told herself this was the only reason, even as doubts curled like smoke in her mind. That night, as celebrations echoed in the city below, Sarathis stood at her balcony and watched the skies. Marcus joined her, hands clasped behind his back, his gaze fixed on the stars. "They look different here," he said softly. "What do?" "The stars." He gestured upward. From Earth they were bright, sharp. Here they seemed colder, harder, as if even the sky has teeth. Sarathis looked at him, surprised by his words. No cairn would ever speak so gently of the stars. To them, the galaxy was not beauty, it was conquest, war, survival. Yet this man saw something else. Perhaps that was why she had chosen him, though she would never admit it. Perhaps his difference unsettled her in ways even her enemies could not. The days that followed did not grow easier. Nobles continued their whispers. Generals questioned his presence, and even the common people wondered why their queen had tied herself to someone so ordinary. Marcus walked through it all without complaint. He listened more than he spoke, observed more than he acted. Some mistook this for weakness. Sarathis began to suspect it was something else. Once, during a council meeting, one of her warlords slammed a fist upon the table, demanding to know why Marcus sat among them. "He has no scars, no victories, no blood upon his hands," the warlord growled. "What right does he have to stand here?" Before Sarathis could answer, Marcus leaned forward, his voice calm but cutting. "Perhaps you are right. I have no scars. But perhaps scars are not proof of strength. Perhaps they are proof of failure, proof that you were not clever enough to avoid the blade." The chamber fell into silence. The warlord bristled, but he did not speak again. Sarathis hid her reaction, but inside something shifted. She saw then that Marcus was not blind to the scorn. He simply chose not to answer it with anger. He answered it with words sharp enough to cut deeper than steel. That night, alone in her chambers, Sarathis found herself unsettled. She had thought Marcus Hale a tool, a symbol, a fragile man bound to her throne for politics. Yet with each day she began to wonder if there was more beneath his calm surface, something the others could not see, something even she had not yet grasped. And though she would not admit it, the thought both troubled and intrigued her. The palace was never silent. Its wide halls carried the echoes of armored boots, the distant hum of engines, and the whispers of nobles who thought their words hidden behind silk curtains. Queen Sarathis had long grown used to it, but now the whispers carried a sharper edge. They were not only questioning her rule, they were questioning her new bond with the human she had chosen as husband. Marcus walked those same halls each morning, calm and steady. He never moved as though he were lost, though the palace was a maze of sharp turns and vast chambers built to impress or intimidate. He greeted the guards when they allowed him near, though most only stared back with suspicion or disdain. He asked quiet questions about their weapons, their armor, their duties. Sometimes he would smile faintly when they answered. He never mocked, never boasted, never tried to prove himself. He simply listened, as though gathering invisible threads no one else noticed. At council meetings, Sarathis sat upon her throne while her generals and nobles filled the room with noise. They argued about supplies, about borders, about enemies watching for weakness. Always their voices would turn back to Marcus. "The Tarkal fleets gather near the outer rim," one general said, his scales glittering under the chamber lights. "We cannot face them if our queen ties us to weakness." "The Veyran will not respect us," another added. "They hear that our queen chose a human for her consort. They will see it as surrender." Their eyes always turned to Marcus, waiting for him to flinch, waiting for him to speak in defense of himself. Most men, Sarathis knew, would have bristled at such insults. Yet Marcus did not. He sat in silence, hands folded before him, gaze calm. If the words struck him, he never showed it. Only once did he break his silence. A noble sneered openly, his voice sharp. "You bring a soft creature into this hall, my queen. Look at him, no claws, no blades, no power. What is he if not a burden?" Marcus's voice cut across the chamber, low but steady. "A burden, perhaps. But sometimes a burden teaches you strength. When you climb a mountain with weight upon your back, you grow stronger than the man who climbs with empty hands." The words startled them. Some scoffed, some shifted uncomfortably. But Sarathis saw the truth. His calm words struck deeper than shouting ever could. He had no need to raise his voice. His silence was a weapon, and his words, when he chose them, landed like arrows. Outside the palace, news spread that the Tarkal were preparing for war. Their fleets were vast, their warriors ruthless. Rumors painted images of skies filled with fire, cities burned to ash, and worlds falling one by one. The Dominion needed strength. The nobles demanded blood, and yet their queen had bound herself to a man who looked as though the weight of an axe could crush him. Sarathis stood upon the balcony of her private chamber one night, her eyes on the horizon where distant towers pierced the sky. Behind her, Marcus entered quietly. He did not speak at first. He rarely forced words into silence unless he had something to say. "You hear the rumors," she said without turning. "Yes," Marcus replied. "They doubt you. They doubt me." Her hand tightened on the stone rail. "Every whisper is poison. Every day they wait for me to stumble." Marcus stepped closer, his presence steady. "Do you doubt yourself?" The question struck harder than she expected. She turned her head sharply, her eyes narrowing. "I do not." Marcus did not smile, but his gaze softened. "Then let them whisper. Their noise cannot shake a mountain. It cannot change truth. The Tarkal will come whether they mock me or not. The real question is what we will do when they arrive." The way he said it, calm, practical, without fear, unsettled her. She had seen warriors speak bravely before battle, their voices loud, their pride swelling. But Marcus's tone carried none of that. He spoke as if war was not a storm to fear, but simply another step in a path he already understood. Later, when Sarathis retired to her chambers, she thought of his words. They lingered in her mind longer than the shouts of her generals ever did. The Tarkal threat grew sharper each week. Reports spoke of raids on border worlds, colonies stripped bare, survivors fleeing with stories of slaughter. Panic touched the common people. Crowds gathered in the city streets, demanding action, demanding protection. The nobles grew louder, pressing for war, pressing for strength. One night, during a gathering in the hall, the pressure broke into open challenge. A warlord named Karvik, his armor plated with the trophies of fallen enemies, strode forward before the entire council. His voice boomed, shaking the chamber walls. "Queen Sarathis," he declared, "you insult us all by seating this human among us. He is no warrior, no leader. When the Tarkal come, will he fight them with words? Will he stand before their blades with his soft skin? I demand proof. If he is to sit among warriors, let him prove he is one." Gasps spread through the hall. No one challenged the queen so openly, not without risk. Sarathis's hand tightened around the arm of her throne. She was ready to cut the warlord down with words sharper than any blade. But Marcus rose before she could speak. He stood calmly, facing Karvik without flinching. "You want proof?" Marcus said, his voice even. "Very well. But strength is not shown in the way you think. You measure it in scars and kills." "I measure it in survival," Karvik snarled. "Speak like a poet if you wish, human. But words will not save you." Marcus's gaze did not shift. "No, words do not save. Actions do. When the time comes, when the Tarkal arrive, I will show you. Not with scars, not with trophies, but with victory." The room fell into silence. Even Karvik's rage seemed to pause. It was not Marcus's size or voice that silenced them. It was the weight in his tone, the certainty that clung to his words. He did not promise to try. He promised to succeed. After the hall emptied, Sarathis approached him in private. Her eyes were sharp, but not with anger, with curiosity. "You speak as though you already know the outcome of battles yet to come." Marcus looked at her, steady as always. "I know only this. Humans have faced wars where hope was gone, where every enemy was stronger, faster, more ruthless. And yet we endured. We found ways to win when logic said we could not. That is what your nobles do not see. They think strength is in armor or weapons, but true strength is the will to rise when everything says you should fall." For a long time, Sarathis said nothing. His words stirred something in her, though she tried to bury it. He was not like her warriors who shouted of glory and conquest. His strength was quieter, but somehow heavier. She could not name it yet, but she felt it growing. That night, when she stood alone in the dark, she realized something that unsettled her. She had chosen Marcus for politics, for strategy, to bind humanity and the Dominion together. But slowly, day by day, he was becoming something else in her mind. Something she had not expected. Not a burden, not a weakness. But perhaps, though she dared not admit it yet, something more dangerous than any warlord who stood at her side. The palace had grown restless. Each day the Tarkal threat pressed closer, their ships gathering like storm clouds at the edge of the Dominion's borders. Rumors carried through every corridor, whispers of raids, of colonies crushed and entire fleets reduced to wreckage. Queen Sarathis felt the weight of her people's fear. It was in the eyes of her generals, in the nervous movements of her servants, even in the cold stares of her nobles. Yet Marcus remained the same. He rose each morning with calm steps, walked the halls with quiet patience, and spoke little. His stillness made some uneasy. To them, silence meant weakness. To Sarathis, it was something else, something she could not yet define. One night, the palace itself shook with danger. It was late, the torches along the stone halls burning low. Sarathis had dismissed her council after hours of argument, her head heavy with fatigue. She had only just begun to remove her crown when the alarm rang. The sound was sharp, metallic, echoing through every chamber. Guards shouted. Blades clashed against armor. The shadows of intruders moved swiftly through the halls. Assassins, they had come for her. Sarathis seized her staff, the weapon humming with power. Her guards rushed in, but the attackers moved with precision, cutting through defenses, their cloaks shifting to hide their forms. Poisoned blades gleamed in the dim light. For a heartbeat, Sarathis wondered if this would be her end. But then Marcus was there. He had been in the chamber beside hers, quietly reading from a datapad. Now he moved with startling speed, no hesitation in his steps. He grabbed a chair and hurled it at one assassin, the wood splintering against armor. He ducked beneath another's blade, driving his shoulder into the attacker's chest with force that sent the alien sprawling. Sarathis froze for an instant. This was no frightened diplomat, no soft consort hiding behind guards. His movements were sharp, precise, trained. He fought not with wild desperation, but with memory, as though his body carried knowledge carved into it long ago. One assassin lunged at her, blade raised. Marcus intercepted, twisting the attacker's wrist until the weapon dropped. In the same motion, he slammed the alien's head against the stone wall. The figure crumpled, unconscious. The last assassin, realizing the mission was failing, tried to retreat. Marcus caught him by the cloak, yanking him backward. His fist crashed into the alien's jaw once, twice, until the body went limp. Then silence filled the chamber, broken only by Sarathis's sharp breaths. Her guards arrived seconds later, too late to save her, too late to witness the fight. They found Marcus standing over the fallen assassins, his chest rising steadily, his eyes calm as ever. Sarathis stared at him. "You..." Her voice was quiet, unsteady in a way it rarely was. "What are you?" Marcus bent down, checking the nearest attacker for signs of life. When he was certain they were only unconscious, he straightened. His gaze met hers, steady as always. "Human," he said simply, but she knew it was not so simple. Later, when the bodies were taken away and the palace secured, Sarathis demanded answers. She led Marcus into her private chamber, the doors sealing behind them. She stood with her arms crossed, her crown set aside, her eyes sharp and unyielding. "You moved like a soldier," she said. "Not a diplomat, not a consort. A soldier." Marcus did not deny it. "Yes." Her breath caught, though she hid it behind a hard tone. "Explain." He was quiet for a moment, as if deciding how much to tell. Then he spoke, his voice calm but carrying weight. "Before I was sent here, before I became a diplomat, I was part of Earth's defense forces. Special units. We were trained to fight in places where no one else could, against enemies stronger than us, faster than us, more ruthless than us. We were taught to win when winning seemed impossible." Sarathis narrowed her eyes. "And you kept this from me?" "You never asked." His words were simple, not defensive. "And perhaps I wanted to see if I could live without it. But war has a way of finding us even when we try to leave it behind." Her heart pounded, though she kept her face cold. She thought of the way he had moved, the way he had read the room before striking, the way he had fought with both strength and restraint. These were not the skills of an ordinary man. They were the scars of someone who had walked through fire and chosen to keep going. "You let them mock you," Sarathis said slowly. "You let them spit on your name, all while hiding this." Marcus's gaze softened. What would it have changed? "If they see me as weak, they underestimate me. That is an advantage, not a curse." His words struck her again, sharper than any blade. She wanted to argue, to remind him that her empire valued strength above all, but deep down she knew he was right. In a galaxy where every empire shouted its power, perhaps the quiet strength was the one most dangerous of all. For days after, the memory haunted her. She replayed the fight in her mind, The way Marcus had moved like water around stone. The way he had turned weakness into weapon. Her court continued to sneer, but now she saw them differently. They measured strength only in scars and trophies. Marcus measured it in survival. She began to ask him questions in private. Not about politics, not about treaties, but about war. How did humans fight, she asked one evening. When you were outnumbered. When your enemy had more ships, more soldiers? Marcus thought for a moment. We fought with our minds. We turned their strength against them. We made them believe they had already won, then struck where they least expected. We learned to adapt. No matter what came, we found a way to endure. And when there was no hope, he met her gaze, his eyes steady. There is always hope, Sarathis. Sometimes it hides. Sometimes it is so small you can barely see it. But if you refuse to give up, it grows. That is humanity's gift. We do not stop. Even when we should, the words unsettled her. She had seen armies break when the tide turned, had seen warriors flee when faced with certain death. Yet here was a man who spoke as though surrender was a word humanity had erased from their language. One night, long after the palace had gone quiet, Sarathis stood again on her balcony. Marcus joined her as he often did, silent until she chose to speak. "Why did you come here, Marcus Hale?" she asked softly. "Why agree to this union? Surely your people could have sent another diplomat, someone less dangerous, someone more ordinary." He looked at the stars, his voice steady. "Because I believe in survival. Not just of humans, not just of Cairn, survival of something greater. Your empire has power. My people have will. Alone, both may fall. Together," he paused, his eyes narrowing as if he saw beyond the stars. "Together we might stand against anything." Sarathis's heart stirred with something she had not felt in years. Not fear, not pride. Something else, something dangerous. She had thought she married Marcus to bind his people. She was beginning to realize she had married something far more powerful than a political tool. She had married a man who carried the spirit of an entire species within him. And though she would not admit it aloud, she was no longer certain who had chosen whom. The morning sky over the outer rim burned with the light of countless stars, yet it carried no warmth. The Tarkal fleets hovered like a storm, their ships vast and black, blotting the horizon. The Dominion's forces lined up before them, disciplined, heavily armored, and confident. Yet beneath the armor of the Cairn warriors, doubt gnawed. Their queen had married a human who now stood among their generals, a human whose body was lean, whose flesh could not endure the strength of their enemies. Marcus Hale observed the formation quietly, his hands clasped behind his back. He did not wear armor, only his ceremonial robes, but there was no hesitation in his stance. The Cairn generals, though larger and stronger, cast uncertain glances at him. Some whispered, questioning the queen's judgment. Others bristled, unwilling to accept advice from one they believed fragile. Sarathis stood beside him, her violet eyes scanning the fleets. She could feel the tension radiating from her people. "Countless ships," one of the generals muttered. "We are outnumbered at least 10-1. How do you suggest we survive, human?" Marcus turned to him slowly, calm as ever. "We do not fight them as they expect. We do not meet them head-on where their numbers can crush us. We move where they are weak, strike where they are blind. Their confidence is their weakness." The generals laughed quietly, some openly scoffing. "Words will not save us," one growled. "You will see the Tarkal tear through us like fire through straw." Marcus's gaze did not waver. "Words do not save. Action does. But before action you must think. They assume their strength is absolute. That assumption will be their undoing." Sarathis's heart quickened. She had begun to understand this human. Where her generals measured strength in claws, scales, and weapons, Marcus measured it in observation, patience, and improvisation. His strength was invisible like the current beneath a river, guiding and shaping everything without notice. Hours later, the battle began. The Tarkal ships surged forward, engines roaring, weapons bristling like the teeth of a predator. The Dominion's fleets met them with discipline, but the disparity in numbers was obvious. Where the Cairn generals relied on force, Marcus relied on calculation. "Split your formations," he instructed quietly, moving from one captain to another. "Draw their focus to the center. Leave the flanks seemingly unguarded. They will rush to exploit it. That is when you strike." Some of the generals hesitated, doubt flashing in their eyes, but the human's confidence was infectious. Slowly they followed his orders, spreading their fleets, creating gaps that seemed to invite attack. As the Tarkal surged toward the apparent weaknesses, Marcus's strategy revealed itself. Hidden channels, smaller ships, and maneuverable frigates surged from the flanks, striking with precision at the Tarkal engines. In moments, entire divisions were crippled, ships drifting without power as if the Dominion had anticipated every move. Sarathis watched, astonished. Where her generals expected chaos, Marcus's plan created order. Where her generals feared defeat, his strategy created victory. The Tarkal were strong, brutal, relentless. Yet they stumbled against something they could not anticipate: human ingenuity. On the ground, the Dominion's forces faced Tarkal warriors in hand-to-hand combat. Marcus moved among them not to fight but to guide. His presence steadied the soldiers. He pointed out weaknesses in enemy formations, encouraged the wounded to rise, and shifted resources faster than any Cairn general had ever imagined. During one critical moment, a Tarkal commander attempted to flank the Dominion center, a move designed to break their lines. Marcus anticipated it. He directed a small squad of Cairn soldiers hidden behind debris and war machines to intercept the flanking force. The Tarkal stumbled into an ambush. The Cairn were surprised, but Marcus had calculated every move. Within minutes, the enemy's plan collapsed, leaving their forces in disarray. The battlefield echoed with the roar of engines, the clash of weapons, and the cries of warriors. Yet through it all, Marcus remained composed. He did not panic. He did not shout orders or rush forward recklessly. He analyzed, adapted, and acted. Where others reacted, he anticipated. Where others failed, he succeeded. The Cairn generals could not hide their astonishment. This human, small and lean among them, was orchestrating victories where the Dominion had feared defeat. Sarathis observed quietly, pride and disbelief warring within her. She had thought Marcus a political pawn, a symbol of alliance. Now she saw he was something more, something far more dangerous than even the greatest Cairn warriors. Hours turned into days. The Tarkal regrouped, launching wave after wave of attacks, expecting the Dominion to crumble under pressure. Each time Marcus found a way to counter them. He used terrain, speed, and cunning tactics that were unfamiliar to the Cairn. He anticipated supply shortages, ambushes, and psychological warfare. Every time the enemy thought they had found a weakness, Marcus had already closed the gap or redirected their assault into a trap. Sarathis saw her people transform under his guidance. Soldiers who had doubted him now followed his orders without hesitation. Generals who had mocked him now sought his counsel. The whispers that once filled the palace with doubt now spoke of him with awe. Humanity, once dismissed as weak and fragile, revealed a new kind of strength, adaptability, resilience, and the courage to face impossible odds and survive. During the final clash of the campaign, the Tarkal flagship entered the battlefield. Its massive engines created turbulence in the surrounding ships. Its weapons unleashed fire that could obliterate entire fleets. The Cairn generals froze, unsure how to counter such overwhelming force. Marcus did not hesitate. He assessed the flagship's weaknesses from the patterns of its attacks, then directed smaller, faster ships to strike at exposed points. When the flagship fired on the Dominion's center, Marcus had already moved his fleet to a position where the blast would do minimal damage. He orchestrated a series of attacks, small but precise, targeting engines, shields, and weapon systems. Within hours, the Tarkal flagship was crippled, its fleet disorganized, its warriors in retreat. Victory was theirs. The Dominion's forces, led by Marcus Hale, had not only survived, they had turned the tide of war. The battlefield was silent but for the groans of the wounded and the crackle of damaged machinery. Sarathis rode to Marcus's side, her armor scorched and her cloak torn. She looked at him, really looked for the first time without the weight of doubt clouding her eyes. "You," she began, but words failed her. Marcus only smiled faintly, tired but calm. "We survived," he said. "That is all that matters." The Cairn soldiers around them erupted in cheers, lifting their weapons in salute. For the first time, they saw not just a human, but a leader, a warrior, a strategist who had turned the odds against impossible enemies. Their queen had chosen well, though many of them would never admit it aloud. As the dust settled and the wounded were tended, Sarathis rode alongside Marcus, her mind racing. She had doubted him. She had seen him as weak. Yet now, after seeing him command the battlefield, she realized the truth. Strength was not always visible. Power was not always measured in size or muscle. Humans, she thought, had a strength that could not be measured by claws, scales, or weapons. It was in their mind. Their will, their ability to endure, adapt, and rise when all else failed. And in Marcus Hale, the galaxy had witnessed it in its purest form. That night, back in the palace, Sarathis looked at Marcus again, quietly, with a weight of respect she had never shown any Cairn warrior. He did not need to boast. He did not need to show dominance. His strength was silent, unwavering, and unstoppable. She knew then that the galaxy would never underestimate humanity again, not while Marcus Hale stood among them. The battlefield was silent now, though the scars of war were everywhere. Burned ships floated in orbit, twisted metal catching the dim light of distant stars. Soldiers moved among the wreckage, tending the wounded, salvaging supplies, and quietly mourning the fallen. Victory had come at a price, but it was victory nonetheless. The Tarkal threat had been repelled, their forces scattered, their fleets crippled. Queen Sarathis rode through the aftermath, the weight of her crown heavy upon her head, though her armor was scarred and torn from the battle. Around her, her generals whispered among themselves, some still reluctant to fully acknowledge what had happened. They had survived, yes, but they had survived because of something unexpected, a human. Marcus Hale walked beside her, calm as ever. His robes were smudged with soot and dust, but his posture remained steady. He did not boast, he did not revel in the attention. Where other leaders might have shouted their triumphs, he simply observed, calculated, and adjusted for the next steps. Sarathis looked at him now, really looked, as they surveyed the remnants of the battlefield. She had watched him for days, had seen him anticipate every enemy move, coordinate every squad, and maintain a calm that had steadied her people in the worst of chaos. She had known humans were different. She had believed him capable, but this exceeded even her highest expectations. "Do you know what your people are saying?" she asked quietly, her voice low. Marcus turned his gaze toward her. "I can imagine. They speak of you as if you are a force of nature," she said. "They call you a human of legend. They speak in awe and disbelief. They cannot believe one man could have led them to victory against impossible odds." Marcus gave a faint smile, not of pride, but of quiet acceptance. "I did not do it alone," he said. "Your soldiers fought bravely. Your generals followed the plan. But yes, humans are different. We endure, we adapt. We refuse to surrender when the odds are against us. That is our strength." Sarathis fell silent for a moment, letting his words sink in. The truth was undeniable. In the midst of a war that had threatened to destroy her empire, this human had turned the tide. Not by brute force, not by overwhelming power, but by intellect, ingenuity, and unyielding will. The Cairn, for all their size and strength, had underestimated him. And now, having witnessed it firsthand, Sarathis realized how profoundly she had misjudged him. Later, in the war room of the palace, the surviving generals gathered. Their faces were a mixture of relief and astonishment. They had come to accept the truth, but acceptance was hard for some. They were proud warriors, used to measuring strength in visible ways. Marcus had redefined their understanding. "Your tactics," one general said cautiously, they saved us. The Cairn would have fallen without them." Marcus nodded, his gaze steady. "The enemy assumed strength meant muscle, numbers, and firepower. They were wrong. Strength is adaptability. It is endurance. It is the ability to act when logic says you cannot. That is what humans do. That is what we bring to the galaxy." The generals exchanged uneasy glances. They were learning slowly that this man, this human, was something more than they had ever imagined. The galaxy itself, they realized, would have to adjust to this new understanding. Sarathis watched silently, pride and wonder fighting within her. She had once thought of Marcus as a symbol, a political alliance, a tool to bind humanity to the Dominion. She had been wrong. He was not a tool. He was a force, a revelation. And she, who had ruled empires and commanded armies, had married him, not for strength, but into strength beyond anything she had ever seen. As evening fell, the palace was quiet, the stars reflecting in the calm waters of the observation deck. Sarathis stood alone for a moment, looking at the distant lights of destroyed Tarkal ships. Marcus joined her, his presence calm but commanding. "They will rebuild," she said softly, almost to herself. "The Tarkal will not forget this. and other empires, they will hear of what happened here. Marcus's gaze followed hers. Yes, and they will realize something important. Humanity is not weak. We are not fragile. We endure. We fight when others would surrender. We adapt when others fail. And now the galaxy knows it. Sarathis turned to him, her eyes wide with understanding. You are more than I imagined. Not just a human. Not just a consort. You are... She hesitated, searching for words. You are a force the galaxy cannot ignore. Marcus gave a faint, knowing smile. I only do what is necessary. Humans have survived because we never give up. That is all. The realization settled over her like a tide. She had once thought strength meant domination. The roar of armies, the glare of weapons. But Marcus had shown her another kind of strength. Quiet, persistent, unstoppable. Strength that endured beyond fear, beyond pain, beyond logic. Strength that turned desperation into victory. Word of the battle spread across the Dominion and beyond. Reports of Marcus Hale's leadership traveled faster than fleets. Allies spoke of him with respect, enemies with caution. Humanity, once considered a minor presence in the galaxy, had become something else, a species not to be underestimated, capable of feats that even the most powerful empires could not predict. Sarathis observed all of it with a mixture of pride and awe. She had married Marcus for reasons of politics, yes, but now she understood that she had married something greater, something unpredictable, unmeasurable, unstoppable. The palace celebrated, though the celebrations were quieter than usual. The victory was not only military but symbolic. The queen and her human consort had shown that intelligence, adaptability, and endurance could triumph over raw power. The Cairn soldiers now whispered among themselves, telling tales of the human who had outwitted the Tarkal at every turn, who had led them with calm and confidence, who had refused to be intimidated by size or numbers. And in the quiet moments, when Sarathis watched Marcus walk through the halls, she realized something more. She had once doubted him. She had once believed him weak. But that doubt had been hers alone. Others had underestimated him. Enemies had underestimated him. Even she, who had ruled the stars, had underestimated him. And now the galaxy had witnessed the truth. Marcus did not seek fame or recognition. He moved as he always had, calm, measured, steady. Yet his presence shifted everything. Humanity, once dismissed as small and fragile, had proven that their strength was not in size, nor weapons, nor raw power. It was in their mind, their endurance, their ability to act when logic said they could not. It was a force the galaxy had never fully seen until now. That night, Sarathis stood beside Marcus on the observation deck, looking out at the distant stars, their light reflected in her eyes. She placed her hand lightly on his arm, not as a ruler over a subject, but as a partner recognizing the power beside her. The galaxy will never underestimate humanity again, she said quietly. No, Marcus replied softly, not while we are willing to endure, to adapt, and to rise. Not while we refuse to surrender. And for the first time, Sarathis allowed herself to feel the truth fully, that she had not married weakness. She had married strength beyond measure. She had married a human who could change the course of history, who could turn impossible odds into victory, who carried a spirit the galaxy could not ignore. In that moment, as the stars glimmered above and the ruined Tarkal fleets lay scattered across space, the queen understood the true power she had embraced. Not weapons, not armies, not politics, but the unyielding, unpredictable, unstoppable strength of a human will, and the galaxy would hear it soon. Humanity had arrived not as observers, not as pawns, not as weaklings, but as a force that could not be ignored. A force that could survive anything, adapt to everything, and triumph against all odds. Sarathis smiled faintly, a mixture of pride, awe, and understanding. Beside her, Marcus Hale did not smile, did not boast. He simply stood, calm, ready for whatever the galaxy would throw at them next. The stars above reflected the truth. Humanity had revealed itself, and the galaxy would never be the same.